Welcome to today's Triple Z. The Triple Z Podcast is a daily recording that you can use to help you fall asleep each night. Just turn down the volume, lay back and enjoy as you fall asleep. Today we are traveling back in time to 1980 and learning about the Dow Jones News and Quotes Reporter application created for the Apple II. Apparently, it was possible to download news and stock quotes on this old computer in the days before the internet. The Dow Jones News and Quotes Reporter is a program that brings you news from the Dow Jones Newswire, the Wall Street Journal, and Barron's, and brings you quotes from the Dow Jones database. The program works with the Apple II or Apple II Plus computer, the Apple Disk 2 disk drive with a controller set up to use 16-sector diskettes, and equipment that connects the computer to a telephone line. When the Apple is connected to the Dow Jones computer via telephone line, the Apple's video monitor can display news or quotes for any security you select from the lists in the Dow Jones News Retrieval directory. With the Apple connected to a printer, you can get a printed copy of all the news stories and headlines that appear on the screen. The stock market information, available via a local telephone call in many areas of the United States, has been delayed 15 minutes to conform to legal requirements. When using the program, you have a choice of over 6,600 securities from the major exchanges. These securities, their symbols, and the Dow Jones News Retrieval telephone numbers are listed in the Dow Jones News Retrieval directory. Use the directory as a reference when you are using this program. This manual assumes that the Apple system is set up correctly, and that you are somewhat familiar with using it. If you are not sure that your Apple is set up correctly, see Appendix A for information on how to set up the system. This manual refers to the program both as the Dow Jones News and Quotes Reporter and as the News and Quotes Reporter. When you read this manual for the first time, we recommend that you try out the suggested procedures as they are presented. Starting the program. What you need. To use the Dow Jones News and Quotes Reporter, you need an Apple II or Apple II Plus with 48K of memory, at least one disk drive with a disk controller card with 16-sector proms, the Dow Jones Reps and Quotes Reporter diskette, the Dow Jones News Retrieval Operating Guide and Directory of Symbols, your password, which Dow Jones supplies, a modem, the device that connects the Apple to the telephone line, and its interface card, and a video monitor or television. You should also have a copy of the DOS manual for reference. And, if you want to print copies of the information you get from the News and Quotes Reporter, you need a printer and an interface card for the printer. Booting the diskette. With many Apple II systems, the Dow Jones News and Quotes Reporter program starts automatically as soon as you put the diskette in the disk drive and turn on the Apple. Booting is the term for the process of starting a program that's on a diskette. Here's how to boot the Dow Jones News and Quotes Reporter. We recommend that you try it as you read. The package for the Dow Jones News and Quotes Reporter contains 2 diskettes, one labeled Master and one labeled Backup. Keep the backup copy of the diskette in a safe place, away from heat, magnets, and dust. If the master copy of the News and Quotes Reporter is destroyed, you can use the backup copy while you send the master copy to your dealer to be replaced. If you have an Apple II Plus or an Apple II with the Auto Start ROM, place the diskette marked Dow Jones News and Quotes Reporter Master in the disk drive as shown in the DOS manual. If you hold the diskette in your right hand, palm up, with your thumb over the label, it's almost guaranteed that you'll insert the diskette correctly. Make sure you close the drive door after inserting the diskette. 2. Turn on the Apple. If the disk drive's in use light comes on, and the drive makes whirring and clicking noises, then your system is automatically booting the diskette and you can go to step 3. If you have an Apple II with the old monitor ROM, an asterisk will appear on the screen when you turn on the Apple. Type 6 Control-P to start the disk drive. If the drive just whirs for more than 30 seconds, your Apple may have the old 13-sector disk proms. Turn off the Apple, take out the disk controller card, and make sure the socket labeled PROM P5 contains part #3410027 and the one labeled PROM P6 contains part #3410028. Then put the card back in the Apple and turn the Apple on again. 3. Once the Apple has booted the diskette, the video screen should show Dow Jones News Quotes Reporter. To continue, press Return. If this welcome screen does not appear even though steps 1 and 2 worked properly, read Appendix A on how to set up the system. If your Apple doesn't have a communications card in slot number 2, the screen will say, Unable to find a communications device in slot 2. You should have either an Apple communications card or a DC Hayes micromodem in slot 2. See Appendix A in your manual for details to leave the program. Press Escape. After you press Escape, the screen displays the end of program messages. Please hang up your phone, then press Return, and, after you press Return, this concludes the Dow Jones News Quotes Reporter. To continue, reboot your system. unless you have an Apple with the old monitor ROM. If you press the reset key, the system reboots itself and starts the program again. If the monitor prompt appears on the screen, you need to type 6 Ctrl-P to reboot the program. Pressing reset takes you back to the beginning of the program. And, at its beginning, the program functions as if the Apple is not connected to the Dow Jones network, even if you accidentally pressed reset when the Apple is connected to the network. Beware of pressing reset if you're booting a diskette other than the News Quotes reporter. It could destroy the diskette's contents. Always turn your Apple off and then on again before booting another program. Each of the 5 options in the center of this structure is an option on the main menu of the News and Quotes reporter. The term menu is often used in computer programs to indicate a list of choices. The main menu. After you boot the News and Quotes reporter program, the screen displays the welcome you saw above. From that welcome screen, press return to get this menu. Dow Jones, News and Quotes reporter, News Retrieval Service, Stock Quote Service, Customizing Features, Disconnect Dow Jones, Exit News and Quotes reporter, choose VOUR selection. This is the program's main menu. It lists the main options available in the program: News Retrieval Service, Customizing Features, and Stock Quote Service. From this menu, you can also disconnect your Apple from the Dow Jones network or leave the program. Customizing Features. This section describes the options for customizing the communication between your Apple and the Dow Jones News Retrieval Service. Before you use the News Retrieval Service, you need to tell your Apple the following things. Starting the program. The local telephone number for the Dow Jones News and Retrieval Service. An alternate Dow Jones telephone number in case the first number is busy. Your password, and how many characters your printer prints per line, if you have a printer. Throughout the News and Quotes reporter, you will see a white square called the cursor. The cursor shows you where you are in the program and indicates when you need to type instructions or answers. For example, notice that on the main menu, the cursor appears after choose your selection to show that you need to type a number to choose your selection. To choose Customizing Features, type 3 and press the return key. The screen then displays the menu for customizing features. Telephone number, alternate telephone number, password, printer line width, 88. You can use the program to store your customizing data on the diskette, so you can use the same data each time you use the News and Quotes reporter. And anytime you use the program, you can change one or more of the features to reflect changes in your communications scheme. E.g., if you want to use a different telephone number or password. Telephone number. Look in the Dow Jones News Retrieval directory for the local Dow Jones telephone number. Type that number after telephone number. For example, let's assume you are in Cupertino, California. Type 446-1470. If you have made a typing mistake, you can use the left arrow key to erase the characters that are wrong. For example, press the left arrow until you have erased 446-1470. The Apple beeps when you reach the limit of backspacing or forward spacing. Now, type your local Dow Jones telephone number. Otherwise, your call could go through to Cupertino, and it might be expensive. When you're sure the telephone number is the one you want to use, press return. Throughout the program, pressing the return key moves the cursor to the next item on a screen or to the next screen. Pressing return tells the program that you have finished with the current item and are ready to move on to the next item. The cursor should move down to Alt. Telephone No. If the first telephone number is busy or otherwise unavailable, the program may use the alternate number for the auto-dial modem. If you're using an auto-dial modem, you may need to include an asterisk to indicate where there should be a slight pause when dialing part of the number, such as 9 or 1 used to get an outside line from some business phones. Select an alternate telephone number from the Dow Jones News and Retrieval directory. Type the alternate telephone number, following the same procedure you used for the main telephone number, but this time insert a 9 asterisk. Delete the 9 asterisk later if you don't need it. Your alternate number should look something like this: 9*941-8450. After you type the alternate number and press return, the cursor moves down to password. When you sign the contract to use the Dow Jones News Retrieval Service, you receive a password. Type your password, following the same procedure you used for the telephone numbers. For this program, the Apple's memory has a display that is 80 characters wide. The Apple's 40-character screen normally shows only the leftmost 40 characters. To see the rightmost 40 characters, press the Control key at the same time as you type. The letter of the screen will go blank because the rightmost 40 characters are all blank for this program. If you accidentally press Control while typing your password, the screen will go blank. Press Control again to return the text to the screen. As you type the letters of your password, the screen displays an X for each letter you type. When you press return, the program asks you to Enter password again to verify. Type your password again. The program checks the two versions you typed. If they don't match, e.g., you made a typing error in one of them, the program displays the message. Password. They do not match. Press return. When you press return, the cursor moves back to password and you get another try at typing your password correctly twice. If you don't want to save a password, press the space bar, then press the return key. Then, each time you log on, the program will ask you to type your password. Log on is computer jargon for connecting with a computer or computer network. This may be convenient if you use the news and quotes reporter for more than one account. If you do have the program save your password on the diskette, the program supplies the password for you each time you log on. That way, you don't have to type it each time. The diskette stores only one password at a time, so if you have more than one account, be sure that you're using the correct password for that account, otherwise the wrong account may be charged for the time you're logged on. If your Apple has a printer interface card in slot number 1, as soon as you have typed your password and pressed return, the cursor moves to printer line width. If your Apple doesn't have a printer interface card in slot number 1, the program asks you, is this information correct? This question also appears if you specify a printer line width. Printer line width. The maximum line width for a printer is 80 characters, as shown on the screen. If your printer prints at least 80 characters per line, press return to leave the 80 on the screen. If your printer prints fewer than 80 characters per line, type 40 and press return. Otherwise, you get the message please enter 40 or 80. After you type 40 or 80 and press return, the program asks you is this information correct. The program accepts only Y or N or return as responses. If you press return, that tells the program that your answer is no, which is the default shown on the screen by the letter N. To change information for a feature, press return. The cursor will move to telephone number. From there, you may type new data for each item or move the cursor through the items until you get to the one you want to change. 2 uses for arrows. To move the cursor from feature to feature, you may press return or use the arrow keys until you type the first character after a prompt, e.g., telephone number. You may use the arrows to move the cursor back and forth from feature to feature. Pressing the left arrow once moves the cursor back to the previous feature. Pressing the right arrow once moves the cursor forward one feature. Throughout the program, unless you are typing a response to a prompt or correcting a typing mistake, the right arrow and return keys perform the same function, tabbing from one item or page to the next item or page. For example, press the right arrow to move the cursor to alternate telephone no. The arrow's asterisk other use is correcting typing errors. Type the first digit of the number you want to use as your alternate telephone number. After you type that first digit, the arrows move the cursor only within the characters of the phone number. Try pressing the right arrow and left arrow until you reach the limits of movement within the phone number. The Apple beeps to let you know when you reach the limits. Now type the alternate telephone number you want to save and press return. The arrows again move the cursor from feature to feature until you type the first character or press the space bar for one of the features. Check all the information on the screen and correct the features so that the information is the way you want it. Then press the right arrow until the screen displays is this information correct. To answer yes, type Y and press return. The program displays the message updating diskette, while it stores the customizing data on the diskette. Then the main menu returns to the screen. This is the only way to store those data and to change old customizing data on the diskette. The program uses the stored customizing data when you log on. The program cannot store data on a flawed or write-protected diskette. If your diskette is flawed or write-protected, if you leave the disk drive door open, or if you take out the diskette, the screen displays the message, your diskette is flawed. To restart, reboot your system. Contact your Apple dealer to replace the flawed diskette or see the DOS manual for information on write-protected and non-write-protected diskettes. You can press the escape key to return to the main menu from customizing features, but this does not save the customizing data you just typed. To check customizing features and see that your telephone numbers and printer width are the way you want them, type from the main menu. After you confirm that customizing features contains the information you want it to, press escape to return to the main menu. 2 of the options on the main menu, Muse Retrieval Service and Stock Quote Service, work only when your Apple is connected with the Dow Jones News and Retrieval Network. The procedure for connecting with the News Retrieval Network requires a telephone line and a modem. You also need your password, which Dow Jones supplies when you contract with them to use the News Retrieval Network. Before you try to log on, make sure all the necessary equipment is set up and turned on. Appendix lists the equipment and manuals that you need for this process. The procedure you use to log on depends on which type of modem is in your Apple, auto dial or acoustical. To log on, you must first select either the news or the quotes option from the main menu. Let's look at news first. From the main menu, type 1 to select the news retrieval service option. If you have an auto-dial modem, the procedure for logging on is very simple. The Apple and the auto-dial modem automatically connect your system with the Dow Jones network. If you haven't saved at least one local telephone number for the Dow Jones News Retrieval Service on diskette, the program asks you to type 1. The program uses that number only once, it doesn't save the number. You've been doing the examples. You've selected the News Retrieval Service from the main menu, and the screen is displaying. Log-on procedure. Please stand by. Dialing 9*446-1479. The screen displays messages, printed one line at a time as the Dow Jones computer system confirms your password and authorizes access to the information. This final part of the logging on procedure usually takes about 3 seconds per message. The messages are: making local connection, making network connection, making Dow Jones connection, password verification, Dow Jones News and Services copyright 1980, Dow Jones & Co. Inc. If you haven't stored your password, the program asks you to enter password. Type your password. The program then must verify that your password is valid and gives you the message password verification. If the program can't verify on the first try that your password is correct, it asks you again to enter password. If this happens, type your password again. You may have made a typing error before. If the password you type is still not verified, the screen tells you log on procedure. Please stand by. Dialing 9*446-1478. Making local connection, making network connection, making Dow Jones connection. Unable to verify password. After you press return, and before you try to log on again, check your copy of the password Dow Jones gave you. If connecting with the Dow Jones computer takes more than 1 minute, you may get the message you have been disconnected. To continue, press return. This indicates that the network has dropped the connection with your Apple, most likely because the network was very busy. Wait a few minutes, then try logging on again. When log on is completed, the program goes automatically to your chosen option, in this case, the News Retrieval Service. Logging on using an acoustical modem is slightly more complex. After you select News Retrieval Service from the main menu, if you have saved a telephone number on the diskette, the screen displays. Log on procedure. Please dial 9*446-1476. When you hear the high-pitched tone, place the receiver into the modem. To continue log on, press return. If you haven't saved a telephone number on the diskette, the program asks you to use the local number from the Dow Jones News and Retrieval directory. Dial the local number, then listen to the phone. You'll hear a high-pitched tone when the network computer answers. Place the telephone receiver in the modem, making sure the telephone cord is at the proper end of the modem. If you're not sure which way to put the telephone, consult your modem manual. After you put the telephone receiver in the modem, press the return key. The rest of the log-on procedure follows the same steps as for the auto-dial modem, giving the same messages on the screen to let you know how it's progressing. If you have trouble logging on to the Dow Jones computer, check that *the modem and its interface card are properly installed. *the switches on the modem are properly set, 300 baud, full duplex and originate, and * the telephone is working properly. If the weather is stormy, an unusual amount of noise on the telephone line may cause a problem. If the Dow Jones computer or one of the network computers that connects your Apple to the Dow Jones computer is not working properly, you may receive a message to that effect, or you may be unable to log on. Try another alternate telephone number. If 3 or 4 tries at logging on are unsuccessful, hang up the phone and wait half an hour or so before you try again. If you don't press return after placing the phone in the modem, the program will wait patiently for you to press return. If you take too much time placing the phone in the modem after the computer answers, or if you wait too long to press return after putting the phone in the modem, the Dow Jones network may break the phone connection, and your screen will say, "You have been disconnected." Please hang up your phone, then press return. Chapter 2. Getting News and Quotes. This chapter describes how to retrieve news and quotes from the Dow Jones News Services. Using the News Retrieval Service, you can get headlines and stories from the Wall Street Journal, the Dow Jones Newswire, and from Barron's. Using the Stock Quote Service, you can get information on over 6,000 securities traded on the New York, American, Midwest, and Pacific exchanges, as well as U.S. Treasury issues and OTC transactions. Refer to the Dow Jones News and Retrieval directory for the list of company and topics for which you can get news and quotes. Dow Jones News and Retrieval Service. The Dow Jones News and Retrieval Service brings you headlines and stories on public corporations, industrial category, and government agencies. The following diagram shows the structure of the news retrieval service portion of the news in quotes reporter. Simplified structure of the news retrieval service. First, let's get some headlines about a stock. If you have been doing the examples we've suggested, you should be logged on and see this on your screen. News, Dow Jones symbol. Getting news in quotes. This screen prompts you to type the symbol for the company or category about which you want news. From here, and from most other points in the news retrieval service portion of the program, you can get back to the main menu by pressing the escape key. Look in the Dow Jones News Retrieval directory for the lists of Dow Jones symbols. Each Dow Jones symbol is a code for the name of a company or category. We'll use HR, the code for International Harvester, as the sample symbol in this section of the manual. Getting news. Notice that the message, Dow Jones symbol, includes 6 dots, which indicate that a symbol has a maximum of 6 characters. Type the symbol, HR, to start getting news. The screen changes to News HR, Current Story. From here, you can get the most recent story or any page of headlines for your selected symbol. Notice that the message on the screen assumes you don't want the story. To keep your Apple logged onto the Dow Jones network, you must continue sending or receiving messages. If a few minutes elapse during which you don't request information from Dow Jones, the Dow Jones computer may disconnect your Apple. This protects you from leaving the Apple logged onto the network while you're not using it. For example, you might be interrupted by some other work that you think will take just a moment, but turns out to take half an hour. If your Apple has been disconnected, when you next type something on the Apple, it will attempt to get the information you requested. When it finds that the Dow Jones computer has broken the connection, the Apple will automatically log on again, displaying the series of messages about connecting with the network and Dow Jones. The program then picks up at the place where you last asked for information. For example, while you have been reading this long explanation about timeout, the Dow Jones computer may have broken the connection. If the Dow Jones computer has broken the connection, the news in quotes reporter will try to get news about, discover that the connection is broken, and automatically go through the process of logging on again. You'll see, making network connection, and the rest of the log-on messages again. If you haven't stored your password, you'll need to type it again. After a long period during which you don't request information from Dow Jones, the local computer, the one that answers the phone when you log on, will disconnect your Apple. In that case, when you next type a request on the Apple's keyboard, the screen displays the message, "You have been disconnected. Please hang up your phone," and press return. After you press return, the main menu returns to the screen, and you must log on again. Headlines. Now for the news. Assuming that you're logged on and that you've typed HR, you should be looking at a screen that asks Current Story. Press return to get the headlines. After you press return, the screen should say Confirming symbol with Dow Jones. Then it should display News HR headline page. Press the right arrow to get the first of the headlines. The program takes a few seconds to send the message to Dow Jones and get back the headlines, which will look something like this. International Harvester to recall. Remaining idled workers. International Harvesters McCardell. Sad strike has worth cost. This is about half of a page of news headlines. In the upper right-hand corner of the screen is a page number, which for this page of headlines is page 1/4. This tells you that you're looking at the first half of page 1 of 4 pages. When you're looking at the second half of a page, the letter IB follows the page number. With all pages have both in and screen. In particular, the last page of a set of headlines may have only in screen. The first 2 or 3 characters of each headline are the code for that headline's story. Jot down a few of the codes so you can retrieve stories later. If you type an invalid symbol, headlines for it, it displays, trying to send message again. The program tries twice to get the message as it sends the symbol to the Dow Jones computer, then displays invalid entry to let you know that the Dow Jones computer doesn't accept the symbol you typed. Look in the News Retrieval directory to make sure you typed the symbol correctly. Note that the symbols may change and that the directory contains a telephone number to call for the latest information on changes in symbols. After an invalid entry for the symbol, the cursor appears after Dow Jones symbol to show that you need to type another symbol. When you finish reading the first screen of headlines, you need to choose what you will do next. The bottom of the headlines screen shows the general options of getting more news, printing news, or getting a new symbol. The options include paging through the headlines, specifying a story ID, printing what's on the screen, specifying a new symbol, and getting a help screen. Most of these same options appear at the bottom of the screen for stories. Paging is a term for going from one screen of news to another screen of news. The 2 ways to page are typing a page number and pressing the arrow keys. When the cursor appears after headline page hash or story ID, you may select any page of headlines by typing its number. For example, type 3. The screen displays part of page 3. The higher the page number, the older the headlines. If you type a number that doesn't have a page of news, the screen says no such page. To see the previous screen of headlines, press the left arrow. Following the example, this gives you the screen of page 2. To see the next screen of headlines, press the right arrow. This gives you the screen of page 2. Try pressing the arrows several times to page through the headlines. When you reach the end of the headlines, the Apple beeps. If you're paging backwards, the Apple beeps to let you know when you reach the beginning. If the network is sending you news when the Apple beeps, you may not get all the characters it sends. ESC does not always return the main menu to the screen. For example, you can use it to stop the current display of news. For both headlines and stories, you may press escape when news is still appearing on the screen. The cursor drops to the bottom of the screen as if you had received all the news for that screen. However, when the cursor is at the bottom of the screen, escape does return the main menu to the screen. Prepared with the IDs for stories, you can select any story from a headlines page. At the bottom of the headlines page is the prompt story ID. To get a story, type its code. For example, type BH and the screen displays the story line by line until the screen is full. When the screen is full, the cursor moves to the bottom of the screen. After paging, you may use the arrow keys and return to page back and forth through a story. You can't specify a page number. At the end of a story, you may choose from the options listed at the bottom of the screen. Most of these are the same as the options summarized for the headlines screen, with the addition of one possibility. Type H to get back to the headlines screen. To get another story, you must return to the headlines screen. Occasionally, you may get a blank news screen after a page of a story because of the way stories are transmitted. A time of day, e.g., 1:57 p.m., usually appears at the end of each story. If you get a blank story screen, you can tell if you've received the entire story or not by paging back one screen from the blank screen and looking for the time. Or you can page forward until the Apple beeps. If the Apple received only part of a page of headlines, e.g., if you press escape while the Apple is receiving headlines, you'll see a question mark at the end of the headlines when you return to the headlines screen from a story screen. Type the headlines page number to get the complete page of headlines. The first news screen contains the prompt current story. If you type Y and press return in response to that prompt, the screen says retrieving current story, then displays the most recent story for the symbol. If you don't have a printer, you may skip this section of the manual. So far, you've been looking at the news on the screen. If you want a more permanent copy, you can use a printer to get a copy printed on paper. See Appendix A for directions on connecting the Apple to a printer. Once you're ready to have something printed, check that the printer is on. Printing a document from a headlines or story screen is easy and straightforward. Type an exclamation point to print the text that is on the screen. The program will say checking for remainder of transmission as it verifies that it has a complete page to print. Then, if the printer is properly installed, it will begin producing your copy. It will print one page of headlines or an entire story. If the printer doesn't start printing, the screen may display the message printer not available. Check to be sure the printer is on and is correctly connected to the Apple. If the screen has no headlines or stories on it, and you type, the printer will print one or more blank lines. To stop printing before a whole page is printed, press escape. When the program is sending a message to the Dow Jones computer or receiving data, the Apple doesn't respond to your pressing the escape key. For example, when the program is retrieving the next page of a story to be printed, it ignores the escape. Before you can stop the printing process, you must wait until the printer starts again. Getting news for another symbol. To get news for another symbol, select a symbol from the Dow Jones News Retrieval directory. Get back to the headlines page, then type from the headlines page. The screen clears, except for the current symbol. Notice that the cursor is between Dow Jones symbol and HR. Type the new symbol and press return. HR will disappear, and the new symbol will appear in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. You may then repeat the procedures you just followed to get headlines and stories. When you have read or printed all the news that you want, press the escape key to get back to the main menu. If you want a quick reference to the options for the news retrieval service, you can get help from the program by typing a question mark from either a headlines or a story screen. After you type the question mark, the program displays a help screen, which summarizes the options. Press return to get back to the headlines or story page from which you typed the question mark. The Dow Jones Stock Quote Service brings you current quotes on common and preferred stocks, warrants, bonds, mutual funds, options, and 2S Treasury issues. It provides quotes from the New York, American, Midwest, and Pacific exchanges. All quotes are delayed at least 15 minutes. The following diagram shows the structure of the Stock Quote Service of the News and Quotes Reporter. To select the stock quote service from the main menu, type 2. If your Apple isn't logged on, you must go through that process. This is the stock quote service screen. From this screen, you can obtain quotes by typing a symbol from the Dow Jones News and Retrieval directory and then typing an abbreviation for the kind of security it is, e.g., stock, bond, etc. If the security is a stock, you must also type an abbreviation for the exchange on which it's traded. Once again, the right arrow and left arrow serve two functions: to correct typing errors and to move the cursor around the screen. Remember that you need to press return after each entry to let the program know you've finished typing that entry. Type the symbol for which you want a quote, for example, HR. Then press return and type the abbreviation for the type of security for stock. Now press return and the exchange prompt appears. Type the exchange, which for HR is NY for New York. Press return again, and the screen asks you, is this information correct? If you've made a typing error, you may use the arrow keys to correct the information. Then, when all the information is correct, type Y for yes and press return. The screen displays the message retrieving quote, and then displays the quote. If you type a symbol that doesn't exist, or you use a non-existent combination of symbol, security, and exchange, the program will let you know. For example, if you type JGB, S, and NY, you would get the message, no stock JGB on exchange NY, do you want another quote? Because JGB is not a valid symbol for that exchange. A composite quote is the average quote from all the exchanges on which a stock is traded. If you don't specify an exchange, the stock quote service will give you the composite automatically, unless the security is traded over the counter, in which case it will give you the quote for over the counter. Generally, most symbols represent securities that are traded only on one exchange, so the composite quote reflects only that exchange. Often you will specify an exchange only if you are looking for a bargain on a particular exchange. If you type Y in response to the question, do you want another quote? The screen erases the quote and asks for symbol, security, and exchange again. If you need help remembering the abbreviation for a type of security or an exchange, type a question mark to get the help screen for quotes. This screen shows you what to type for each security or exchange. After you've refreshed your memory, press the return key to get back to the stock quote screen. Let's say you want to check on a bond now. Look in the Dow Jones News and Retrieval directory for a bond symbol, then type it. For example, type BIA-MB, then type the abbreviation for the type of security, which for BIA-MB is T for Treasury issue. Notice that the prompt for exchange disappears. For this program, you need to specify an exchange only for stocks. You don't need to specify an exchange for any other type of security. The screen will display the quote for BIA-MB. At the bottom of the screen is the question, do you want another quote? When you have looked at all the quotes you want to see, type in response to that question. The main menu will return to the screen. The last two options on the main menu are to disconnect from the Dow Jones network and to exit from the News and Quotes Reporter. When you return to the main menu from either the News Retrieval service or the Stock Quote service, your Apple may still be logged onto the network. To disconnect from the Dow Jones network, type 4 from the main menu. The screen will say, you have been disconnected. To continue, press return. After you press return, the main menu returns to the screen. To leave the News and Quotes Reporter, type 5 from the main menu. If you have an autodial modem, the screen says please unplug your autodial modem, then press return. If you have an acoustical modem, the screen says please hang up your phone, then press return. After you press return, the screen says this concludes the Dow Jones News and Quotes Reporter. To continue, reboot your system. Here are the steps to follow to put your system together. 1. If you have not already done so, you must sign a contract with the Dow Jones News Retrieval service and get your password. To get your password, complete the contract form while you're at your Apple dealers. Then have the dealer call Dow Jones, receive the password over the phone, and distribute copies of the contract. 2. To set up your Apple, follow the instructions in the Apple II Basic Programming Manual or the AppleSoft tutorial. Your Apple must have at least 48K of memory for you to use the Dow Jones News and Quotes Reporter. 3. To set up the disk drive with its interface card, follow the instructions in the DOS manual. The interface card must have 16 sector PROMs and be plugged into slot number 6. If you don't have the auto start ROM, you'll need to know how to boot a diskette. See the DOS manual for that information. 4. The modem connects the telephone to the Apple. To set up the modem, follow the instructions that came with it. The interface card must be installed in slot number 2 to work with the Dow Jones News and Quotes Reporter. The modem switches should be set to originate, full duplex, and 300 baud. Before you try to use an acoustical modem, be sure you know which way the telephone should be placed. 5. To set up the printer, follow the instructions that came with it. Install the interface card in slot 2 if you have an old high-speed serial interface card. Check to see if it contains a P8-2 PROM. If it doesn't, contact your Apple dealer to get one. Various printers are available for the Apple. Consult your dealer for information on the printers available. Most brands of printers made for use with computers can be used with the Apple. Appendix B. Glossary. This appendix defines some of the terms used in this manual and in the New York Stock Exchange. Bear, one who believes the market will decline. Bear market, a declining market. Bid, the opposite of an offer to buy. A bid is the highest price declared by a purchaser at any given time. Bid and asked, also known as a quotation or quote. A bid is the highest price declared by a purchaser at any given time. The asked is the lowest price a seller will take at the same time. Big Board, the New York Stock Exchange. Blue Chip, a company with a national reputation for high quality and wide acceptance of its products or services, and for its ability to make money and pay dividends. Bond, a promissory note or IOU from a corporation. Bonds are usually issued in multiples of $1,000 or $5,000. Sometimes they may be in $100 or $500 denominations. A bond represents debt. Bondholders are creditors of the corporation, not part owners as are shareholders. Bonds are most often secured by a mortgage. The issuing company usually promises to pay the bondholder a specified amount of interest for a specified length of time, and to repay the loan on the expiration date of the bond. Broker, an agent handling the public's orders to buy and sell securities, commodities, or other property. The broker receives a commission for those services. Bull, someone who believes the market will rise. Bull market, an advancing market. Capital gain or capital loss, profit or loss from the sale of a capital asset, either short-term or long-term. More than 12 months long-term capital gains are taxed at a lower rate than short-term capital gains. Capital stock, all shares that represent ownership of a business, including preferred and common stock. Commission, the basic fee for a broker for selling or purchasing securities or property. Common stock, securities representing an ownership interest in a corporation. The terms common stock and capital stock are used interchangeably when a company has no preferred stock. Common stockholders assume greater risk than bondholders and preferred stockholders, but often exercise greater control of a company and may get dividends and capital appreciation. Convertible, a bond, debenture, or preferred share that the owner may exchange for common stock or another security in accordance with the terms of issue. Debenture, an unsecured bond, also called a debenture bond. Dividend, payment designated by the board of directors of a company to be distributed pro rata among the shares. For preferred shares, this is usually a fixed amount. For common shares, it varies with the wealth of the company and the amount of cash on hand. Downtick, term for a transaction made at a price lower than the preceding trade, also known as a minus tick. Equity, common and preferred stockholders' ownership interest in a company, also refers to excess value of securities over the debit balance in a margin account. Ex-dividend, synonym for without dividend. Someone who buys a stock ex-dividend doesn't receive the recently declared dividend. When stocks go ex-dividend, the stock tables include the letter X after the name. Floor, the trading area where stocks and bonds are bought and sold. Government bonds, bonds issued by the U.S. government, regarded as the highest grade issues. Issue, any of a company's securities. Also, the act of distributing securities. Listed stock, stock for a company that is traded on a securities exchange. *D that has filed a listing application and registration statement with the Securities and Exchange Commission. The New York Stock Exchange, for example, usually requires that companies listed with it have national interest and a minimum of 1 million shares publicly held among not less than 2,000 round-lot stockholders. The company should also have net income in the latest year of over $2.5 million before federal income tax and $2 million in each of the preceding 2 years. Long, term for ownership of security. I'm long 200 shares of General Electric. Margin, the amount a buyer pays when using a broker's credit to buy a security. Under federal regulations, in the past 20 years the initial margin has ranged from 50 to 100% of the purchase price. Minus tick, see down tick. NASDAQ, the National Association of Securities Dealers Automated Quotations, which is an automated network providing brokers and dealers with price quotations on securities traded over the counter. Net change, the difference in the price of a security from the closing of the market one day and the closing price on the following day on which the stock is traded. The net change is usually the last figure on the stock price list. For example, plus 1 1/8 means up $1,125 per share from the last sale on the previous day the stock was traded. Odd lot, a unit of stock less than the standard 100-share unit or the 10-share unit of trading. from 1 to 99 shares for the great majority of issues, from 1 to 9 for inactive stocks. Offer, the price at which one is ready to sell. Over-the-counter, abbreviated OTC, a market composed of securities dealers who may or may not be members of a securities exchange. The market takes place mainly over the telephone, trading securities of thousands of companies that have insufficient shares, stockholders, or earnings to warrant application for listing on the New York Stock Exchange, Inc., or another exchange. The over-the-counter market is the principal market for U.S. government and municipal bonds. Plus tick, see uptick. Point, for a share of stock, a point means $1. For bonds, $10. Portfolio, an individual's or institution's holdings of security, which may be bonds, preferred and common stocks, mutual funds, options, treasury notes, and warrants. Preferred stock, a class of stock with a claim to earnings in priority over common stock, entitled to dividends at a specified rate when the board of directors declares them, before payment of dividends on common stock. Quotation, also, quote, the highest bid to buy and the lowest offer to sell a security in a given market at a given time. Round lot, a unit of trading, e.g., 100 shares of stock, $1,000 par value for bonds on the NYSE, also a multiple of that unit. SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, established by Congress to help protect investors. Split, dividing the number of shares of a corporation into a larger number of shares. A 4 for L split by a company with 1 million shares results in 4 million shares. Each holder of 1 share before that split would have 4 shares after the split. Ordinarily, splits must be approved by directors and shareholders. Stock dividend, a dividend paid in securities rather than cash. The dividend may be additional shares of the issuing company, or shares of another company held by the company. Street, the New York financial community in the Wall Street area. Unlisted, a security not listed on a stock exchange. Uptick, a term designating a transaction made at a price higher than the preceding transaction, also called a plus tick. Volume, the number of shares traded in a security or an entire market during a given period, usually a daily basis. A daily average is computed for longer periods. Warrant, a certificate whose holder has the right to purchase securities at a stipulated price within a specified time limit, or perpetually. When issued, a short form of when, as in if issued, indicating a conditional transaction in a security authorized for issuance but not as yet actually issued. 0-tick, a transaction made at the same price as the preceding trade, but a lower price than the preceding different price.